What happens when the woman who thought she owned the world is finally forced to face it? Hey friends, I hope you and your loved ones are safe and well today, because the story I'm about to share is a wake-up call for anyone who's ever let pride blind them to compassion. This isn't just about courtroom drama. It's about privilege, humility, and what happens when a judge decides that money can't buy growth, and that sometimes the only real sentence is transformation. Let me introduce you to Brianna West. The name might not mean much outside Hudson City, but in those circles of high society and whispered country club gossip, Brianna was royalty, heiress to a real estate empire, always dressed in couture, always late, always loud. She wasn't just rich, she was untouchable, or so she thought. The courtroom was packed, every bench filled, every conversation a low buzz of speculation, not because people were curious about the case, but because they wanted to see if justice could stand tall in the face of power. Then came the click of heels. The double door swung open, and in walked Brianna West, dripping in designer confidence. Sunglasses still on, though we were indoors, latte in hand. No apology on her face. If this were a runway, she would have won. But it wasn't. This was court. She barely noticed the people she blocked as she stopped mid-aisle to glance at her lawyer with a flick of her wrist. Behind her, Michael Brenner, her attorney, followed, clearly exhausted, clearly regretting every decision that led him to represent her. "Sit down," he whispered. She rolled her eyes and sat crossing her legs like she was at brunch and not on trial for reckless endangerment. The judge hadn't even arrived, and already you could feel it. Her arrogance sucked the air out of the room. "All rise," the bailiff said, and the entire courtroom stood. Judge Marcus Reeves entered, a tall, dignified black man with a voice that could silence a stadium. He didn't need to yell. He didn't need to threaten. When he looked at you, you listened. He scanned the room, calm and composed, until his eyes met Brianna's. Just for a moment, his gaze lingered, not with anger, but with a deep, weary knowing. He'd seen women like her before. He knew exactly what she thought this was: a formality, a slap on the wrist, a fine she'd pay off before lunch. But Judge Reeves didn't believe in that kind of justice. He believed in accountability. And the moment he opened the file, the courtroom shifted. "Ms. West," he said, his voice even, "you're charged with reckless driving and endangering a pedestrian, Mr. Edward Lopez, who was lawfully crossing the street at the time of the incident." Brianna groaned loudly. "Your Honor, no one was seriously hurt," she said, already interrupting. "I mean, he tripped. People trip every day." Michael, her lawyer, physically winced. Judge Reeves didn't say a word. He simply looked at her, quiet and still, and waited. The courtroom was silent except for the tapping of her manicured nails on the table, a sound that said, "I'm bored, wrap it up." The judge turned to the bailiff. "Bring in Mr. Lopez." The side door opened, and in came Edward Lopez, a retired school teacher in his 70s. He walked slowly, his arm in a sling, a quiet dignity in every step. He took the stand, cleared his throat, and began. "I've taught for 35 years, he said. "I've seen children grow into people. I've believed in second chances, but that day, I felt invisible. You could hear a pin drop. I was using the crosswalk as I always do. Then I heard an engine, loud, angry, and I turned just in time to see a car speeding toward me. I fell. I hurt my arm. But what hurt most was that the driver didn't even stop, didn't look, didn't care." And with that, he glanced at Brianna, not with rage, but with disappointment. The courtroom watched her, and for the first time, she looked unsure. For just a second, her jaw clenched. Her tapping stopped. Her eyes darted away from his. Judge Reeves leaned forward. "Ms. West," he said, "the law does not weigh intention, it weighs impact. You didn't just break the law, you ignored the life in front of you." Brianna opened her mouth again, that spoiled tone creeping in. "This is being blown way out of..." "Enough," the judge said. And just like that, the room froze. The sentence he gave wasn't a fine. It wasn't even jail. It was 200 hours of community service at the Hudson Women's Shelter. You will serve food. You will clean floors. You will listen to women who've lost their homes, their families, even their sense of dignity, he said. And maybe, just maybe, you'll start to find yours. Brianna's face turned red. "You can't be serious," she blurted out. "That's humiliating." But Judge Reeves didn't flinch. "This isn't punishment, Ms. West, it's perspective. And if you fail to complete it, I assure you, the consequences will be far less forgiving." The gavel slammed down, and just like that, the woman who once owned the headlines now had to clean tables in a shelter. And something tells me her transformation has only just begun. There are courtrooms where justice is routine, and then there are moments where justice becomes unforgettable. Brianna West sat stone-faced, legs crossed, arms folded, wearing entitlement like it was tailored just for her. She didn't flinch when Mr. Jimenez spoke about how he felt invisible. She didn't apologize. She didn't even pretend to care. She was still clinging to the same story. It was just a mistake. Nobody got hurt. Why is everyone overreacting? But something about Eduardo's words had shifted the room. You could hear it in the silence. You could feel it in the judge's breath. Even Brianna's own lawyer, Michael Traynor, had stopped trying to whisper advice in her ear. He knew it wouldn't matter now. Judge Reeves adjusted his glasses and leaned slightly forward. His tone didn't rise. His voice didn't shake, but his words hit like a gavel before the gavel. "Ms. West," he said, "your actions were not just reckless. They were thoughtless, self-absorbed. And what's more troubling than the behavior is your utter lack of remorse." Brianna shifted in her seat. For the first time, her lips parted, not to protest, but from confusion. She had been through hearings before, paid fines, fired PR people, cleaned up messes. This wasn't supposed to feel this real. Judge Reeves continued, calm but unrelenting. "You sit here today treating this courtroom as if it's your personal inconvenience, but the law doesn't answer to money, and it certainly doesn't answer to ego." There it was, the moment, the one everyone would talk about for weeks to come. Judge Reeves paused, and then he delivered a sentence no one saw coming. "This court could impose jail time or a substantial fine," he said. "But I don't believe that will change you, Ms. West. You're not in need of punishment. You're in need of perspective." A murmur rippled across the gallery. "Therefore," he continued, "you will complete 200 hours of community service at the Hudson Women's Shelter. You will not just sweep floors, you will serve meals. You will listen, you will clean toilets, and for the first time in your life, you will not be the most important person in the room." Gasps, real gasps. Even Brianna's lawyer blinked. Brianna opened her mouth, but the judge cut her off with a single raised hand. "This is not a negotiation," he said firmly. "This is your opportunity, an invitation to change. I suggest you take it." The gavel came down. Crack. Court adjourned. But for Brianna West, it was just the beginning. She stormed out of the courtroom, heels clicking angrily down the marble steps. Her hands were clenched, her jaw tight. Community service? Me? They want me scrubbing floors like some criminal. Michael Traynor didn't say a word. He didn't need to, because deep down, even she knew, the judge wasn't being dramatic. He was being merciful. But mercy doesn't always feel like a gift. Sometimes it feels like sandpaper to the soul. Later that night, in the back of her chauffeured car, Brianna stared out the window. The city rolled past like a blur. Neon lights, taxis, kids laughing on the sidewalks. She usually didn't notice this part of town, but tonight she did, for the first time in a very long time. She felt something she didn't recognize, not shame, not guilt, something else, a question. What if they're right about me? The next Monday morning, Brianna West stood outside the Hudson Women's Shelter, arms folded tightly across her chest, designer shades covering her eyes, a latte in one hand and attitude in the other. This wasn't where she was supposed to be. She should have been on a rooftop brunch in Soho or at a spa retreat in Sedona, not staring at a chipped blue door with a crooked sign that read, Hudson Women's Shelter, serving with dignity. Since 1978, a voice broke her mental escape. You're Brianna? She turned. A woman in her 40s stood at the doorway, dressed in jeans and a plain navy polo. Her name tag read Marcia Daniels, volunteer coordinator. Her tone was calm but firm. No nonsense, no swooning at celebrity. Brianna gave a slight nod. Let's just get this over with. Marcia smiled thinly. That's one way to start. Follow me. Inside, the shelter was busy. Women bustled around with trays of food, boxes of donated clothes, kids giggling in a corner reading books. The air smelled like canned vegetables, coffee, and something Brianna couldn't quite place. Something raw, like struggle. Marcia handed her an apron. We start with dishes, Brianna blinked. Excuse me. Apron, sink, soap, dishes. That's how it works here. Brianna hesitated, holding the apron like it might bite her. Marcia didn't flinch. Nobody here is too good to wash a plate. Brianna put it on, badly, and stomped toward the industrial sink like it owed her money. The dishes were endless, greasy trays, plastic forks, chipped plates. The water turned cloudy within minutes. Her manicure, French-tipped and flawless, was already suffering. Every now and then, she'd glance at the clock, convinced time had stopped moving. Across the kitchen, two women prepped sandwich bags, chatting quietly. One of them, a tired-looking woman named Renee, nodded toward Brianna. New girl? Marcia smirked. Yeah, court mandated. Renee raised an eyebrow. She's got that look, like she's waiting for someone to notice her and hand her a medal. By the time lunch rolled around, Brianna had dried her hands no less than 20 times and asked 3 different people how much longer she had to stay. The answer was always the same. You've barely started. Then came the moment. A little girl, couldn't be more than 7, came up to Brianna, tugging her apron. Excuse me, the girl whispered, eyes wide. I lost my pink coat, the one with butterflies. My mom said not to lose it, but I did. Brianna froze. The kid looked at her like she was supposed to help, like she could help. Brianna knelt down, slower than usual, her eyes scanning the racks. It took 10 minutes, but finally, she pulled out a tiny pink coat wedged between 2 oversized parkas. Here you go, she said softly. The little girl's face lit up like Christmas morning. Thank you, you're really nice. And just like that, Brianna West, the headline socialite, the courtroom spectacle, stood frozen in place by a child's smile. It wasn't much, just a lost coat, but it hit her in a way nothing had in years. For the first time that day, she smiled, not for a camera, not for approval, just because. The next day, Brianna came back. No makeup, no sunglasses, same coffee, different attitude. She didn't expect anything to change. She assumed the shelter would feel just as alien, but something was different. Maybe it was the way Marcia nodded slightly, almost like a quiet approval, or the way Renee didn't whisper about her this time. Maybe it was the way she no longer walked in thinking the room should orbit around her. She just walked in. By lunch, Brianna was helping prepare trays, no complaining, no eye rolling. Her hands moved clumsily at first, but the rhythm of the shelter, constant, human, unpolished, started to pull her in. That's when she met Linda. Linda was organizing socks and toothbrushes into plastic bags, humming an old gospel tune. She looked up at Brianna and smiled warmly. "First week?" Brianna nodded. "Yeah, how'd you guess?" Linda laughed. "You still look like you're holding your breath." Brianna smirked. "I probably am." They worked in silence for a few minutes. Then Linda spoke again, so softly it almost didn't land. "I've been here 6 months, left my ex with nothing but my son and a garbage bag full of clothes. This place saved my life." Brianna's hands paused over a roll of toothpaste. I didn't know." Linda shrugged. "You're not supposed to, until you see it." Before Brianna could respond, a man approached them. He was older, maybe 60, with a frayed suit jacket and a dignified air that time hadn't been able to strip away. His name tag read, Michael. "I used to work on Wall Street," he said simply. Then came the crash. One bad deal, one bad week, and just like that, my savings were gone, my house gone, wife gone too. Brianna blinked. "And now you're here?" Michael nodded, and grateful, humbled, alive. Something about the way he said it, without shame, without anger, hit her in the chest. They didn't know her story, but they didn't judge her either. As they packed bags together, Brianna listened. Linda talked about rebuilding her credit score from scratch, how she learned to sew again to make clothes for her son. Michael joked about once spending $800 on a steak dinner and now feeling proud over stretching $5 into a meal. It was ridiculous and real. It was humbling. And for the first time in a long time, Brianna wasn't thinking about herself. Not her sentence, not her image. Just these people, their strength, their honesty, and the sinking realization that maybe she had spent her whole life surrounded by luxury, yet starved of truth. When her shift ended, Brianna didn't rush out. She stayed behind, helping fold a box of donated coats. And just before she left, Linda gave her a nod. "You'll be okay, Brianna, just keep showing up." And Brianna smiled, not because she felt okay, but because for the first time, she wasn't pretending. The shelter was winding down for the evening. The usual chatter had faded into soft hums, the clink of trays being cleaned, and the rustle of blankets being handed out. Brianna stood by the coat rack sorting donations, a task she once would have scoffed at, but now found strangely grounding. Her hands moved slower than usual, not from fatigue, but from thought. Her mind replayed Linda's story, Michael's quiet strength, and something inside her kept whispering, "This matters. Keep going." Then came a small voice. "Excuse me, miss?" Brianna turned to see a little girl, maybe 6 or 7, standing with wide, teary eyes. She wore a sweater 2 sizes too big and clutched its sleeve like it was a security blanket. "I lost my coat," the girl said softly. "It's pink, with a butterfly." Brianna knelt slowly. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Tamara," she whispered. "Okay, Tamara, let's go find that butterfly." Hand in hand, they rummaged through the racks. Brianna gently pulled aside heavy wool jackets and oversized trench coats, making space for the tiny splash of pink she hoped was still there. And then, tucked between 2 adult coats, she found it. A small pink coat with a Freyan butterfly stitched on the pocket. Tamara gasped, "That's it!" She wrapped it around herself like armor, grinning through tears. Thank you, Brianna smiled. Not her photo op smile, not her courtroom smirk, but the kind of smile that starts behind your ribs and works its way outward, quiet, warm, real. Tamara looked up at her one last time. You're really nice. And then she ran off. Brianna stood there for a long moment, her hand still resting on the empty hanger. She didn't know why that moment hit her so hard. Maybe it was the way Tamara said thank you, like it actually meant something. Maybe it was because no one had said you're really nice to her in years and meant it. Or maybe it was because for the first time in her life, she did something for someone else and didn't expect applause, credit, or status, just kindness, and it was enough. She walked out of the shelter that night without looking back, but something had stayed with her. Something had shifted, not in how people saw her, but in how she saw herself. The next morning, Brianna West returned to the Hudson Women's Shelter, not because a judge ordered her, but because she wanted to. She didn't wear designer sunglasses or click across the floor in stilettos, just sneakers, a plain sweater, hair pulled back, no cameras, no entourage, and no mask. Something had shifted after Tamara hugged that pink coat, something that lingered long after the lights of the shelter had dimmed. It was the first time in her life she had helped someone with no transaction, no win for her name, no headline, no social leverage. And that feeling, it wouldn't let her go. So here she was, back at the kitchen sink, scrubbing pans, wiping tables, serving meals, listening. Linda noticed the difference. She offered a cup of tea on Brianna's break and said, "You don't look like you're surviving this anymore. You look like you're here." Brianna smiled. "I think I am." Later that day, while folding clothes in the donation room, Brianna paused and looked around. The chipped paint, the crammed shelves, the volunteers using their lunch breaks to serve. And she asked herself a question she had never asked before. What if I could help beyond these hours? She had something most people here didn't: resources, a network, access to people with power, people who, like her once, had no idea what went on behind doors like this. So she started making calls. At first, she stumbled through the conversations. These were friends who brunch at the Ritz, who wear privilege like perfume. How could she explain why they should care? But then she stopped trying to pitch and just told the truth about Linda, about Michael, about Tamara and her butterfly coat. And slowly, people listened. Some came to visit, some donated. One hosted a small fundraiser. Another offered pro bono legal help for the women. And Brianna, she was still showing up at 7 a.m. in sneakers, handing out oatmeal. But now she was also organizing community partnerships, recruiting professionals to offer workshops, and rallying donors to keep the shelter open longer hours. What had started as a sentence had become a mission, not one born from guilt, but from vision. She wasn't trying to redeem herself anymore. She was building something. The night of the fundraiser arrived, and for the first time in a long while, Brianna West wasn't worried about how she looked. Still, she dressed with care: sleek black pants, a soft blue blouse, no diamonds, no designer logos, just quiet elegance. She looked in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back, not because her hair was different, because her spirit was. The event was held in a small art gallery downtown, modest with exposed brick walls and folding chairs. No chandeliers, no champagne towers, just heart. Linda stood at the door, greeting guests. Michael poured coffee. Tamara sat with her mom near the back, doodling on a notepad. Brianna stood in the corner for a moment, letting it all sink in. People she once dined with at five-star restaurants were here: CEOs, philanthropists, media personalities, many of whom once whispered behind her back. She spotted Amanda Reyes, an old socialite friend, standing near the hors d'oeuvres with a frozen smile. Amanda had texted her once after the court hearing, "Thinking of you, so sorry, that judge was brutal." Tonight, Amanda looked stunned to see her not in shame, but leading something real. A soft chime signaled the start of the program. Guests took their seats. The lights dimmed, a volunteer played a soft piano piece, and then the MC took the stage. And now, the woman whose journey brought us here tonight, Brianna West. Applause echoed. Brianna stepped up. She paused, breathed, looked around the room, and spoke. "A few months ago, I stood in a courtroom convinced that I was the one being wronged, that I was above consequences, that people like me didn't belong in places like that. But I was wrong. I wasn't the one suffering. I was the one hiding behind privilege, behind the illusion that my time was more valuable than anyone else's life." She paused, her voice steady. "And then I met a woman named Linda who had to choose between safety and homelessness. I met a man named Michael who lost everything and still showed up every morning to serve. I found a little girl named Tamara who thought losing her coat was the worst thing in the world until someone gave it back to her. And in those people, I found something I never had: humility, humanity, and purpose." The room was quiet. Some leaned forward. Some dabbed their eyes. "I'm not here tonight as a rebrand. I'm here because transformation is real. Because when justice is paired with compassion, it doesn't just punish, it heals. The Hudson Women's Shelter didn't just change me, it saved me. And now, it's our turn to give back." The room erupted in applause, not polite, but thunderous. People stood. Amanda Reyes cried. A city councilwoman pledged $10,000 on the spot. And Brianna, she stepped off the stage not as the woman they once whispered about, but as a leader, a builder, a reflection of what redemption really looks like. It was a rainy Tuesday when Brianna West walked back into the courthouse. Same marble floors, same echoing hallways. But this time, she wasn't the defendant. She was the keynote speaker. The Hudson City District Court had invited her to speak at a judicial conference on restorative sentencing, accountability through compassion. A far cry from the day, she rolled her eyes at Judge Reeves and tapped her diamond nails on the desk. Now, she carried nothing but a worn leather notebook and a reputation she'd rebuilt from scratch. As she entered the courtroom, the memories hit her like a wave. The gavel crack, Edward Lopez's voice trembling, her own shame swallowing her like quicksand. But she didn't flinch. She stood taller. Judge Reeves sat at the bench, not presiding, just watching. Their eyes met. This time, she didn't smirk. She smiled, respectfully. He gave a small nod. She stepped up to the podium. "Some of you may remember me, others may not. I stood right here months ago thinking the world revolved around me. But then something happened. I was sentenced to community service. I thought it was a punishment, but it became my rescue." The room was silent, not because it was dramatic, but because it was true. I scrubbed dishes, sorted coats, cried in a walk-in freezer, but I also met people who showed me grace when I didn't deserve it. I learned that privilege doesn't make you better. It just makes your blind spots harder to see. She paused. Judge Reeves didn't give me mercy. He gave me a mirror and the courage to look in it. She looked over at him, and for the first time he smiled. Not the professional, judicial kind, a real one. Restorative sentencing isn't about being soft. It's about being smart. It's about creating people who walk out of the system better than when they came in. I'm one of them, and I'm not the exception. I'm the possibility. When she finished, the room rose to its feet, not out of duty, but out of belief. Later that afternoon, Judge Reeves approached her quietly in the hallway. "Miss West, Judge, you've come a long way." "No," she said. "I just stopped running from myself." He nodded. Then, almost like an old friend, added, "I think Edward Lopez would be proud." Her eyes welled up, but she didn't cry. Not because she was trying to be strong, because she was. That night she walked home in the rain, no umbrella, letting it soak through her coat. She didn't mind. Sometimes you need to feel it all to know you've changed. So, who was right? Who was wrong? Brianna West was wrong. Utterly, unapologetically wrong in how she behaved, how she dismissed people, how she weaponized her privilege. But Judge Reeves was right in the way that matters most. He didn't just sentence her, he challenged her. And Edward Lopez? He was the mirror, the human face of the consequence she never wanted to see. In the end, this wasn't about courts or fines or hours served. It was about a heart cracked open, a life repurposed, a woman rebuilt, not by shame, but by purpose. So, what do we take from this? That real change doesn't start with punishment. It starts with humility, with listening, with serving, with stepping out of your comfort zone and into someone else's shoes. Because the truth is, privilege might buy you power, but it will never buy you peace. Only grace can do that. And grace, my friends, is free, but it will cost you your pride. If this story touched you, challenged you, or reminded you of someone you used to be, leave a comment, hit subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. This is Black Women, and we're telling stories that matter. Thank you for being here. Would you like me to now generate the thumbnail prompt and SEO title/description for this video?